Yeah.
Okay. And of course, thank you so much to all of you who are watching us live right now. This is www.techmake.tv, and we have partnered a very interesting and special partner who's watching, who's streaming with us as well from the other end. Wildfire, you can quickly just introduce your page, and I'll introduce my page. Then we'll come back straight to the content so that we get the world to know what's going on. Over to you.
All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the 1873 FM radio. We've gone digital. All broadcasting is happening from the comfort of our homes as we are observing the lockdown rules for everybody to stay away and protect each other and protect yourself. And we welcome also, it's not the first time, General Bantu Holomisa. I've had a couple of conversations with him on the 1873 FM, and it's good to have him on the live video as well.
Thank you very much. It's good to participate in this debate.
Right, over to you. And yes, of course, we are going to be having a very interesting discussion. First of its kind. I know most of our viewers would have wanted us to do this the other way around, where Mr. Mawere should have been the guest. So, Mr. Mawere, you are not off the hook. We are only doing this in reverse. We are going to also invite you specifically, you as an individual. I know today you are part of the panelists as well, but definitely we are going to be inviting you shortly so that we also get to discuss with you as Mr. Mthungwa Mawere, a South African best businessman, so that we also get to hear a lot from you, because there's been a lot that has been going on, and Zimbabweans are excited. They need to know what has been going on through. But of course, to Dr. To Mr. Bantu, the president of one of our South African political parties, there. Thank you so much. We do not take this for granted. You are our special guest. You have relegated Mr. Mthungwa Mawere. He's a panelist, but he's going to be our guest very soon. Thank you so much, Mr. Bantu, for having us live right here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, yes, once more again. So I'll quickly dive into the issues of the day. I'll try and do a little bit of technical shakeups here and there up until I'm satisfied. So my sincere apologies. Hopefully I'll be settled very soon, but I'll try and move things a little bit because I came in a little bit late, but I want things to be a bit smoother than they're looking. So yeah, here and there you may have it. But over to you, Dr. Bantu. In a nutshell, can you please explain to us the South African landscape, especially the political landscape? We need to understand, how is it to be like a South African opposition party in South Africa? What are the major challenges that you face? We need to have a comparison with the Zimbabwean landscape, but from your South African perspective, how is the journey and how difficult or easy is it to be a South African opposition, and how does a government perceive you?
Oh, thank you very much. The opposition parties in South Africa have contributed a lot in terms of strengthening our democracy. We have been pointing fingers at wrong things which are done by those who are running the country. I remember when we were campaigning against the removal of President Zuma, we were united in doing that. But at the end of the day, that process helped the ANC to confront President Zuma, to say, in the interest of the country, please sit down. So we credit that campaign to the opposition parties. Over and above that, in Parliament, we serve in different portfolio committees. This is where we try and influence policies, because at that level of portfolio committees, when we discuss laws, we tend to apply a non-partisan approach, try and bargain for the constituents you represent. But of course, we are not naive. We also do a lot of oversight. That means we call for ministers and departments to account on the budget they have been allocated. So in a nutshell, I would say the opposition parties, when there is a need to narrow the gaps amongst themselves or close ranks, we do so. But at times one go his or her own direction. But at the same time, we are not naive that when the president of the country says to all opposition parties, let's sit together and have coffee, there is this problem, we comply and then we bring our input in that particular forum. So we don't, the UDM, for instance, is not opposing anything that moves. There are parties in the world which, if they are in the opposition benches, they just oppose anything that moves. We are not that type of a party. We are more looking at building South Africa.
Interesting.
That's it.
So when you get to sit, how often do you fight? I know specifically we've seen a lot of drama in Parliament and in other places where we see a turn of events, especially when I speak of one of the opposition parties with regards to Mr. Malema. We see a lot of drama happening in Parliament. How do you reconnect that? Because after that, at times we see you coming together, shake hands for a certain cause, you all come together. How do you do that? Because in Zimbabwe, there's serious, strong polarization. We do not see people hug, shake, and come together too many times, more than they actually are seen in public fighting.
Hello? Are you still there?
Was I clear there?
Hello? Are you there?
Yes, I'm
there.
Yeah,
I'm back.
Yes, did you hear my question? I can hear you. I'm not so sure if others can hear me.
No, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, we can get my question.
Yeah.
Yes, Chandra, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
I can't hear a thing.
Yes, did you get my question, sir?
Oh, there must be some problems there.
Okay, let us
Hello?
see if we can sort. Chandra, can you hear us?
I can't hear you guys. Sorry.
Okay, let me.
Can you hear me now, General?
Hello. Right, not sure, not sure what's going on with the audio from the general side there.
So maybe he can go out and come back.
Yes, maybe ask him
Hello?
to go out and come back again. Hello, General.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello?
Okay, we seem to have. Let me see if I can send the general a message.
Can you now hear the general? General, can you now hear us? Because I can hear everyone loud and clear.
I can hear him. Yeah. So let's see when he comes back.
Okay, great. So of course, we are conversing with the general there, who is the president of an opposition party in South Africa, that is UDM. So we want to try and understand a lot of political issues, relations, and the political landscape in South Africa, so that we are at the same page here, and also different and understand how Zimbabwean politicians can relate with South African politicians while we are waiting for the general there to come back. He seems to be losing us. Our audio wasn't clear on his end, so I
I'm
hope
back.
he's now able to hear us. General, welcome back. Can you now hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, thank you
Can
so
you hear
much. Right.
Can you hear me?
I'll ask my question again. I was asking about the polarization between the ruling party and the government versus the opposition parties. And I was giving an example of how we have seen quite often South African members of parliament fighting with the ruling party and other opposition parties when it comes to parliament business. And now we also see that the other side of South African politics as well, when you also come together with your president and you hold hands for a cause and you seem to be driving together. Do you dramatize this? Do you do what is the storyline? Because when it comes to Zimbabwe here, when these guys they don't talk, they just don't talk. They don't talk publicly and they don't even talk privately, unless if they then talk behind the cameras. But you seem to fight before the cameras and you also hug and talk well when it comes to issues of national importance. We want to understand the dynamics here. How do you South Africans get to do this? Because recently we saw President Cyril Ramaphosa with opposition party leaders addressing COVID-19 press conference, and it seemed to be you seem to be in cordial relations and you hate for the good cause. But when it comes to parliament, chairs are thrown all over. I need to understand, how do you guys handle your relations between the government and opposition parties?
Well, I think I can attribute this to during Mandela's period when we had a government of national unity. Although later on that government of national unity disappeared, but that culture of consultation and respect for one another is still with us. And also in Parliament, where we do more work is in the morning sessions, where we go to different portfolio committees. In those committees, as I said, irrespective of what size of your party or members of your party in that committee, but it's about engaging each other on the needs to develop the country. And when we develop a legislation, you will find that there is a give and take situation. ANC might come up with a legislation trying to push their own political party line, but they would be reminded about the other interest groups which are in South Africa and the minorities. And we end up coming up with a legislation which is inclusive. But if you watch us in the afternoon in Parliament, now that's merely a grandstanding, just to try to embarrass each other. But after Parliament, when we go out at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, we go out through the same door, and then we go and have dinners in the restaurants, joking to each other. Weekends, we play golf with each other. So, but the more important period in politics in Parliament is when you are sitting in the portfolio committees in the mornings, when you are doing a thorough oversight, asking questions to the directors general and their staff members on how they've spent the money which was allocated to them, and also to look into their annual reports. That's where we tend to respect each other.
And just quickly to other panelists that we have there. Do you have strong issues or any issues of state, should I say, brutality or repression from arms of the state? Are you at any point subject to this as a South African opposition party? Have you been submitted to such?
Hello?
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 General,
Yes,
can you hear me?
Can you repeat the question around the statistics?
So I was asking, as opposition parties in South Africa, are you at any given point subject to state repressive repressiveness, or have you ever been subject to any form of repression from state apparatus, be it the police or the army, or the state security? Have you ever been targeted, or do you feel targeted, or are you a victim of any such incident in the past since you formed?
No, since 1994, the Constitution of South Africa is protecting everybody. And the Constitution of this country is underpinned by principles of promoting human rights and transparency, and also the issue of spying and harassing political opponents or beating their followers. It has subsided completely. Yes, after 1994, 95, you still had those intimidating tendencies. But I think the democracy in this country is maturing. In terms of expression, freedom of expression, you can have press conferences, you can attack your political opponents in parliament and outside parliament. But you don't have to use force to do so, or be fearing that you will be arrested. No, those things used to happen during the apartheid era, not anymore.
So I think, General, when you look at Africa, I know there's a Pan-African Parliament that is based in South Africa. Do you think this digital age has helped in bringing people together, bridging the gaps that exist?
Well, the Pan-African Parliament was a good idea when it was mooted. But I'm not sure if we went further to say the resolutions taken in that parliament should be referred directly to the respective countries for them to be considered and possibly be implemented or integrated into the policies of those different countries. Well, the technology, of course, is helping us, but there are still other countries which I think they need to upgrade their infrastructure.
So if we look at the ideal and the idea of bridging Africa, are we closer to the ideal that is enunciated in the Agenda 2063?
Well, I don't want to lie to you. We have not even started to debate that issue here in South Africa in Parliament. So I would blame those who sit in that forum for not coming back and streamline that debate as you are suggesting. So we're still lagging far behind, but we must not be we must not be frustrated by the processes. Some of the systems in our continent are taking a slow path. I mean, they are very slow.
And you were a former leader of your nation before the end of apartheid. Was it easy to adjust to democracy?
No, you must remember that when I was the head of Transkei government, it was a military government. And we worked closely with the liberation movements. And in working closely with them, we had an advantage of knowing where the direction was heading to. And we immediately freed the politics in Transkei in that the Radio Transkei, Capital Radio 604 were free to have political debates with the communities of Transkei. And that helped us to have a smooth transition up to 1994. And we took a decision as Transkeians that we are going to go back and be integrated into a bigger South Africa, because after all, the homeland system was never canvassed with the people of South Africa. So we even had a ceremonial flag, a lowering of the ceremonial flag lowering parade, where we said, never again shall we be called this area a Bantustan, but it will be part of a new South Africa. So we didn't have any problems, and I think we took a right decision.
And when you look at democracy versus the military government,
Okay.
From a decision-making point of view, sometimes when you get frustrated.
Well, I don't want to lie to you. It's worse with President Cyril Ramaphosa, because he's a consensus person. He consult, and then sometimes you feel, man, no, this thing needs just to be told, hey, this is the direction we're going. Why keep on consulting all the time before you take a decision? But anyway, that is his style. He's a process person. But in terms of military, I liked the style of Madiba, because Madiba was, he would listen to you and make your points, you come across and make your points. But Madiba would be the last one to say, after careful consideration, this is the direction we're taking. Decision is taken. Yes, sometimes to work with civilians, it frustrates, but I'm now a converted Democrat. I'm no longer a dictator, so I'm learning.
So, but is it the issue, General, with those that have served before, that when they come into these positions of power, they want to sort of strong arm people into line or do things a certain way?
Come again?
I'm saying, is it the issue with those that have served before in the army, when they come into positions of power, they sort of tend to want to lead with a strong arm?
No. You see, you must remember that in the government of South Africa, we changed laws, and we have a constitution, and we have PMFA rules, how to spend government monies and so on. But where we are frustrated, some of us, is when someone has misused his power or her power or embezzled funds, and then you don't see the criminal justice system kicking in or taking place against those individuals. This is where now we begin to say, but Mr. President, you have been given power. Can you account to the country how many prosecutions have taken place since you took over, given that so many billions or trillions of rands are reportedly having been siphoned out of the country? And once they start scratching their heads and look down, and then you get frustrated.
And then maybe when we look at the role of a member of parliament, I know the system in South Africa is different from other African states. In Zimbabwe, where Tonio is, it's a constituency-based system. Do you think most of the MPs that you encounter actually know their duty
Well, the system of South Africa of electing MPs, we follow a proportional representative system as opposed to constituency-based system. These systems have got advantages and disadvantages, both of them. But I think in the case of South Africa, we should move towards constituency-based system so that at least if you are an MP, you will be directly responsible, yes, to your party, but over and above that, to your constituents. Under proportional representation is a little bit difficult because sometimes you are not serving your constituency where you live, but you are deployed elsewhere. And at times you have a problem of language. And then people don't know you. I think the best for South Africa is to move towards constituency-based system where you mix. You can have half constituency-based system as well as proportional so that you address the issues of gender and disabilities and so on and so on. But the danger of proportional representation is that you don't have enough freedom to express the views of your constituents. It is the bosses of the party 9 out of 10 times who dictate what must be done. I noticed this during the Zuma era when we were discussing the Nkandla scandal. The ANC were just told, ANC MPs were just told to go and vote against this report and also to protect their president at all costs. And the opposition parties continued to hammer on this report that Zuma must be accountable. And then we opted to go to court. And this is where we broke the wall. And Zuma, without going back to their caucus, he said, yes, I will pay. So he left them under the bus. So, so these systems needs to be integrated, as far as I can see, for the continent, in the continent.
And the MPs, you have been in parliament for how long?
I don't know, but I've been there for some time.
So one term, but for a long time.
Yes.
So if you look back and look at your colleagues, you feel that there is no shared understanding of shared understanding,
yes,
of what the role of an MP is.
Well, all members of parliament know their roles. Even new members of parliament, they orientate them, their workshops, they are told about the do's and don'ts. But human beings are human beings, you know them. There will be some of the odd cases where people do their own things. But the frustrating part is what I would call is a controlled democracy, where you'll find that this MP, although his or her constituency is demanding A, B, C, D, E, that MP cannot unilaterally impose that without going through the central command, which is the head office of the party, to say this is what we want to discuss, which is contrary sometimes to the party policies. So constituency-based system would have accommodated such such worries, in that you would be in a position to stand up in Parliament and say, notwithstanding the party position on A, B, C, D, E, but the people I represent are calling for A, B, C, D, E, and so on and so on. But the bottom line is that you, as a member of Parliament, you have to have discipline, self-discipline. Even if you feel strongly that I'm going to differ with my party, but you should do that in a disciplined manner.
I hear what you're saying, General, but I've noted a lot, especially when we cross the borders across in Zimbabwe. Most MPs seem not to know why they are actually in Parliament. Could it be case of the political landscape, or it's the issue of ignorance from the politicians themselves, why they are in Parliament in the first place?
Yeah, well, it's possible that it's a question of being ignorant or not well versed with the policies of one's parliament and the country. Because here in South Africa, you will find that we are given funds to fund our constituency offices, where you pay rent, and then you are supposed to be manning that office on Mondays before you go to Parliament, so as to listen to the complaints from the communities, or if they want assistance, you should be available. And or you create a network with the media, so that if you want to raise something, you are free to do so. But as I've said earlier on, under proportional representation, you will find that the MPs are not that free, because they have to toe a party line. But you are correct. Some of the MPs or some of our colleagues, they seem to be confused as to what is their role.
And then when you look at citizens, do you feel sometimes citizens are disconnected to their institution?
The citizens, yes, under proportional representation, there's no doubt they are not connected to the MPs. Sometimes you go to a village, you ask a question, who is your MP here? They will not know, because the MP was once deployed after elections, but that particular MP is not visiting the people. So the proportional representation system is problematic when it comes to that.
So even where you don't have proportional representation, you may find that parties would then be, the representatives would then be not accountable to the voters, but to whoever is in power or in the executive. And when people think of government, rarely do they think it's their government. They actually think it's somebody else's government. Do you get that feeling?
Yeah, well, the propaganda part of it, the people would believe some of the things which are said by the ruling party, for instance, in South Africa, where they say, we are bringing you food parcels. And these food parcels are not, they don't say they are coming from the government. They will say it's the ANC which is giving you food parcels. So in that way, people are easily, especially those who are struggling, the poor people, because that's an exploitation of the poor. The educated people will understand the rules that no, this is a propaganda. But people will say, this is our government which is feeding us. This is our government which is, this is the ANC which is giving us food. This is ANC which is giving us medication and so on. Not necessarily this is the government. I don't know whether you understand me on this, or maybe I didn't hear you properly.
No, that's exactly what we're trying to unpack. So that those people out there who may want to save people, they can do so knowing what is required of them in a democracy.
Yes, although in South Africa, to those people, it's quite interesting when you see them, poor as they are, that when they want services and they see that the government is not delivering, they organize themselves and just go to the streets and protest. So which is also means that our democracy is vibrant. So they are not just going to be hoodwinked by given food parcels and they keep quiet. They still want water, they still want roads, they still want medication. So in a way, as we developed, the voters are beginning to understand what's going on. I guess that is why you'll find that the ruling party, which had struggle credentials, they used it in 94 and so on. But you will find that now they are reducing their members in parliament gradually, meaning therefore people are ready to vote for other parties. They might vote for ANC nationally or provincially and then vote for another party regionally. So that's the maturity of our democracy. We should encourage that.
And
one party dominance in South Africa is not going to succeed. Fortunately, we have independent media. We have strong opposition parties which can speak their own mind. And media and above all, our judiciary is also independent.
And then there's a question here, General. Good day, and panel. No offense to the General. How does he justify being a representative of the people when he doesn't know how long he has been a member?
Well, you can calculate yourself. I was in Parliament in 1994 up until 96, before the ANC showed me the door for being ungovernable. And then I came back in Parliament in 1999. I've been there since 1999, so you can calculate it.
Okay, so Simbarashe, please use your arithmetic. There's a republic, but minus 4 years or 3 years. But he has been in the trenches, former general and a leader of his nation at the time, but he was in favor of democracy. When we talk of democracy, there are people who would not want to relinquish power when they have it. And in some countries, they have personal experiences of this kind of behavior. And when you see someone in Africa, don't generalize and say all generals are allergic to accountability. Not all of them. There are some who can submit themselves to the Constitution, who can operate below the law, not above the law. Furthermore, how does he feel qualified to comment or respond to a question on members of parliament not having an idea what their true role is in parliament, regardless of which country they are. Finally, should there not be a limit as to how many terms a person may represent in parliament?
What's your last point?
Should there be a term limit for parliamentarians, or it should be unlimited?
Well, for now, it should be. That's an interesting debate you are coming up with, because we've only been limiting the presidents only. When it comes to members of parliament, we have never had such a debate. I must be honest with you. I was looking at, for instance, at John Lewis. He's a congressman in USA. He used to work with Martin Luther King. And then I look at Lady Pelosi. Those two, I met them in 1989 in Washington. They were still Congress people, congressmen or congress lady, whatever you want to call it. They are still in that institution even today. So which means if you were to say, I want to limit the period for members of parliament, there might be some challenges in terms of institutional memory, the experience, and so on. I mean, look at Pelosi today. She might end up being the person who has saved America from Trump's dictatorial tendencies. But it's worth debating that. But here at home in South Africa, it's free for all. It's only a president who has served 2 terms only.
So I think that's, General, we are in our last 10 minutes of this conversation. And the questions, some people are saying it's a great discussion. One says it's nice discussion. You never know what nice means in Africa. But nevertheless, somebody is saying, I'm enjoying what I'm hearing. We have this civics literacy program, which is promoted and powered by our radio platforms, just to learn civics, the rights and obligations of citizenship. I know you are locked down. It's very difficult to lock down a general, but I know you are an obedient general. So you don't have a mask, but that's all of us then. But we are not going to spread COVID or this virus. But General, do you feel there's need to promote literacy? Use your time whenever it's there. I know you have been available for us at short call. Do you think this is important in building the Africa you want?
Oh yes, there's no doubt about that, especially that now we have an agreement to trade amongst ourselves. And I predict that after coronavirus saga, there's going to be a lot of adjustment. Some of the countries which used to be independent, producing food and so on, they suffered when the so-called globalization was introduced. But this globalization, it tended to favor the big countries or developed countries, and they used our countries as dumping zones. So it's a wake-up call, and I hope that we will have to make sure that the state or the countries now must lead in developing the economies of their own. And in doing so, put more emphasis in trading with your neighbors and so on up to Egypt. So one hopes that people will not again be saying, I'm going to order nails from China or India. Yet you have raw materials which can manufacture those from within the country.
So, and Zimbabwe, do you see any question for the general, or you have been intimidated by the general?
No.
Tony, you're quiet. Mr. Zobo, do you have any question for the general, or you are an observer?
Oh, so thank you, General. I mean, I'd like to commend the South African government, the way it has handled the crisis. It's amazing, the coordination. What worries me, though, is that we are focusing on firefighting, and in the mainstream media, in the Twitters and social media of this world, there is no South African dream or African dream that we are actually talking about, even from an AU perspective, that post-COVID, this is how we're going to position ourselves in the global value chain. Because you find that crises like the bubonic plague or the plague of 1918, World War, the most entrepreneurial nations were the ones that came out victorious afterwards. So what is our dream? Where do we want to play in the value chain? Are we already projecting, and are we selling these ideas to the general man on the street such that we know that post-COVID, 25 years from now, we are going to be like this? So that part, I don't know if it's something that you are having maybe high-level discussions in your circles.
We have not yet started that debate, but I'm impressed with the coordination which is being done by President Ramaphosa in his capacity as chairperson of AU. I think, but his coordination is mainly limited to deal with coronavirus. But I foresee, as I've said earlier on, that we need to close ranks in the continent and see in what way can we make sure that our raw material is processed from within the continent. Let us export finished products to outside the country rather than taking the raw material to these countries. And when we need the services for the same material, you have to pay dearly. I mean, look at this coronavirus when it started in China. Everything in this continent, almost everything comes from China. So are we going to again give them another chance? No.
So just, I mean, before Corona, you find that the world was already changing, buoyed by technological changes, basically. But obviously, Corona has accelerated the change, the technological change. Now we are Skyping, we are doing Zoom, everything is virtual now, basically. But you find that we are still where our forefathers were, where the means of production, we don't own the means of production, because the means of production in the fourth industrial revolution are the technological infrastructure like what Cisco has, your Facebook, your what. Right now, what the platforms we're using, we've got our apps, we've got our solutions, but everything is sitting on the top layer. So that means that we are still subservient to the same people. So that revolution, is it really benefited, or is it going to benefit Africa? Are we going to really get the dividends from this particular trajectory that we're taking?
It's a sorry state of affairs, because even the gadgets we are using, the end beneficiary to it are the manufacturers of it. And when you try to master their technology, they are going to change the direction and come up with another thing. So it's a sorry state of affairs for an African continent. And it's going to take us some time. But if we look inwards and turn inwards and say, what kind of education system do we have? And what kind of support we would need from the governments to develop our own technology so that we can compete internationally. But for now, we are still going to be the slaves of these developed countries, unfortunately.
That's a very clear picture, Honorable. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank Ralph, any last comment though?
No, I just have to say thank you so much to the General for the enlightening conversation that we had. And looking forward for us continuously engaging and getting educated in terms of the role of parliamentarians and the role of political players.
And General, any last closing words?
From my side, thank you very much for this interaction, and I hope you could broaden it even to approach other role players in South Africa. And out of that, will emerge as people who are concerned about what's happening in our countries.
Thank you. And our friend from Zimbabwe, that's what happens when you start anything in the name of the continent, you always lose people. And in the end, you end up alone. You wonder why Africa is not as united as it ought to be. It starts with us, and we are the us. As individuals, let's pause, reflect. Let's not take for granted civilization. That when you have civilization, it can make one human being appear to be foolish when they are not foolish. It make one person graduate from one civilization to another without crossing borders. So when we talk of clash of civilization, knowledge can be a bridge. And knowledge that is shared can be a more durable and sustainable bridge to unite people who may disagree so that they can see something in their own eyes but without breaking it. A glass can be half full, can be half empty, but it's one glass. So let's celebrate those who give up time so that others may benefit from what they are doing. And yet the people they are serving don't even know what they are doing for them. Institutions are built, government is established, but not many people know what is government. There are people who call themselves ruling party and say, who are you ruling? There is no provision in the constitution for ruling.
That's a revolutionary
sovereignty of the individual. Whether you fought in the struggle or you didn't fight, one man, one vote allows one person to be foolish to also express their will wrongly, and you must respect them. So when we have plurality, diversity, let's celebrate it. And when we say Africa, let's celebrate the diversity that makes us one, not the homogeneity that we seek. Imagine we all looked alike, thought alike. Would that be desirable, preferable? The answer may be no. So as we move from one class of just sharing ideas, just earlier on, Tonel said, I don't know who General Holomisa is. And I think you need not Google. He will say, we were on the same platform, but he never left the house. Thank you very much.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay.